but it was the battle scenes of World War I that mainly gripped my imagination, and of them the scenes of the gas attacks at Passchendaele were the most gripping. I can still recall the ominous fog surrounding the men hiding in trenches and the trails of blinded men marching in a row. Some stared at the reader through hideous, wide-eyed gas masks that made them look like wildly glaring sea monsters. The comments were innocuous, but the scenes were fearful and unforgettable. The other book of those pre-high school years that was so memorable and implicitly historical contained a series of comparisons on facing pages of towns in England and New England that bore the same names. Thus, there were photos with comment on the towns of Biddeford, Devon, and Biddeford, Maine, of Bath, Somerset, and Bath, Maine, of Portsmouth, Hampshire, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, of New Haven, Sussex, and New Haven, Connecticut, and of Hertford, Hertfordshire, and my own town, Hartford, Connecticut. It was only later that I would understand that these were mainly towns of England's west country and south coast, and why their names would have carried over to New England. But it was enough for me, then, to search for the similarities and differences of these towns on either side of the Atlantic, and to puzzle about how they could have come about. By the time I reached Hall High School in West Hartford, I was a compulsive reader, and of that affliction I have never been cured. In the high school years I tried everything at least once, from acting in the school plays, at which I was at least not completely embarrassing, to sports of all kinds, at which I was totally embarrassing. The school's curriculum was traditional, but the teachers I knew best were excellent. In math, unfortunately, only algebra vaguely interested me, but in French I galloped ahead, to disaster. For some reason, I had convinced myself that my pronunciation of the French language was good, if not excellent, and so I entered the Connecticut High School French Pronunciation Contest, a state program I now cannot believe could ever have existed, and, to the rage of the head of my school's French department, I came in last. Years later, I recalled his outrage when, in a Paris café, I got into a debate with a fierce young Maoist. I was told he later became a banker. The café's patrons were much amused, not about the debate, but about my French, which was perhaps more or less fluent, but to listeners it sounded like some lost dialect of Appalachia. But I flourished in two of the school's major programs. The 2 or 3 years of Latin I took I enjoyed, whether because the rule-bound declensions and conjugations seemed so neatly logical, even when irregular, or whether in what I could actually read in Latin I sensed in some small way the drama of the lives of those who had spoken the language. For whatever reason, I liked the Latin I studied and profited by it. But it was in English that I found my footing, largely the result of having 2 extraordinary teachers. One was Alfred A. Wright, then an elderly man, soon to retire, who for years had refined his teaching of English grammar and in 1935 had published the fruit of his life's work, Words in Action, a Study of the Sentence. A disciplinarian, he led us through the book chapter by chapter and tested us again and again with questions of increasing complexity. I recently went over Harvard's copy of the book and was impressed with how elementary the beginning was and how complex the concluding chapters. It was a school book, not a reference work, designed for teachers and students, but rigorous and clear throughout. The other English teacher could not have been more different from Wright. Samuel B. Gould, born in the obscure Connecticut town of Shelton, was in his 20s when he taught at Hall High School, 1932-38. But that must have been the time that his innovative ideas on teaching were developing, and we, unknowingly, were the first beneficiaries of them. We read short stories, parts of books, some poetry, with Gould explaining, inspiring, and sharing his own enthusiasm. I don't think at that point he had any theory of how he was teaching. He seemed to like to teach, and had a keen sense of literary values that he conveyed to us, so that we gained a sense of style.